Hello and a warm welcome to the Federal. I'm Neelu Vyas, and on this platform, I'm going to get you debates, interviews, monologue analysis based mainly on politics and current affairs. Today, let's talk about the small town of Joshimath in Garhwal, Himalayas, as to what is happening. The entire world is watching with bated breath because there is news about the fact that Joshimath can collapse anytime. There are reports of houses having developed cracks. There's water oozing out from the ground, people living in constant fear and despair. And there have been lives which have been lost. Chief Minister Pushkar Singh Dhami today is in Joshimath, but can he save the town from collapsing? That is the biggest question. Are the reasons man made? Are the reasons geological or anthropogenic? There are many factors behind it. So let's begin the discussion today and we'll find out, can anybody really save Joshimath at this point of time? I'm joined by very two special persons. Let me introduce them to you. I'm joined by Mr. S.P. Sati. He's an academician in the Garhwal Uttarakhand University. He's from the Department of Basic and Social Sciences, College of Forestry and Horticulture. Mr. S.P. Sati, welcome on the Federal. I'm also joined by Anup Nautiyal. He is a renowned political and social activist, and he's also the founder of SDC Foundation Uttarakhand. Welcome, Anup, on the program. Let me begin the discussion today with Anup. Anup, you've been working constantly as to what is really happening in Joshimath. First of all, I really want to know what's happening on the ground. How many houses really have developed cracks? Because the last figure which I saw 3 days ago was 261. I think now the figure has mounted to more than 500. So what is the realistic number and what is the condition over there of the people, the locals?
Niru, I don't think words can really capture the intensity or the pain of what the people of Joshimath are going through, and many other people who care deeply about the Himalayas, who care about Uttarakhand. So whether they happen to be living in Uttarakhand or elsewhere, because this pain is enormous. And I was speaking to a friend a short while ago. In fact, Dr. Sati and I, we have many mutual friends. So we were just chit-chatting, and I said to him that perhaps Joshimath is the turning point in the turbulent history of Uttarakhand. And now, of course, you'll come back to me and say, what does that really mean? So perhaps for the first time in the history of the state, we are seeing with our own eyes a town which is on the verge of collapse. And when I say a verge of collapse, imagine what is going to happen if there is a rainfall. And of course, Dr. Sati can give a far more informed view about that, being a geologist, being an expert, being a scientist. But purely from a citizen sort of standpoint, just one rain, one slight tremor, and the whole town, so to say, will come tumbling down. And when I say turning point, what I actually mean by that, Neelu, is that Uttarakhand has seen the collapse of, let's say, Tihri. But when Tihri collapsed, there was a trade-off. And the trade-off came in the form of a hydropower project. So, of course, one can argue back and forth and, you can have different views. But the fact of the matter remains that when Tihri tumbled, you got a hydropower project. Similarly, in very recent months, we've also had a village here in Uttarakhand called Lohari, which is again also, gone down again for a hydropower project. But in the case of Joshimath, this entire town of 20,000-30,000 odd people is literally on the verge of collapse, on the brink of collapse. When it's going to happen? And to come back to your question, naturally, when somebody is in a situation like this, one is going to be very, very anguished. And I think two words really describe the feelings of the people of Joshimath. One is anger and the other one is sadness. So, you have anger because, the people of Joshimath have been crying hoarse for a long time that our houses are developing cracks. Please do something about it. Their pleas have fallen on deaf ears. So that is the anger. And sadness, I think it's no rocket science, for us and for anybody watching this program. If we start, seeing cracks, develop in our own houses, in our own apartments or in our homes, how are we going to feel? So this is, largely the sentiment, and I think I should take a break here for your next question.
I'll come to Mr. Sati now. That Mr. Sati, various reasons have been pointed out as to what is really happening and how it has happened in Joshimath. It looks like a deadly cocktail of landslides, seismic activity, unplanned development. But is there a way one can really save Joshimath? What about those people who have built houses in those towns and they don't want to go back, but still they have to see their houses, collapsing right before their eyes? Is there a way one can save Joshimath?
Actually, I was expecting this direct question from you, that can is there any way to save the Joshimath? Unfortunately, this is a very harsh statement, but no. Now, Joshimath township cannot be saved. Only the thing what we can do is to save the people of Joshimath. And it is a urgency actually to shift the people of Joshimath somewhere else. Whatever the causes are there, what could have been done in past, that's a past. Now the only thing remains is a administrative way to save the people. There is no science involved now. Only thing that administration can take it as at an war footing. For last couple of days, government has shown its this eagerness, and there is a paradigm shift on the nature of the government. Otherwise, government was showing its indifference on this matter. But for last 3 or 4 days, now the machinery of the government is expedite, and they are working very hard to save the people. I am happy that at least the positivity in the atmosphere in such a gloomy environment is now in the form of the government activity and activeness of the government, proactive way of the government. That is the best the good part of
I
this
mean,
whole
practically,
phenomenon.
how much time really would the government take to evacuate some 20 to 30,000 people, as Anup was saying, that's a population of around 30,000 people. So, how many days would the government take to evacuate all of them and place them in a proper place somewhere?
Now it's a million-dollar question, but the things are that the government should fix the priorities. There should be a scientific categorization of the places, the which region which is the most vulnerable and it is going to collapse in few days. The first priority should be the people of that region should be shifted somewhere else. Then after the category second and category third and fourth, we were talking, Mr. Notalji and I was talking about this, that there should be a scientific classification of the vulnerable communities, vulnerable regions. And in
Hmm.
that way, the priority should be fixed. First, those people who are most vulnerable, they should be shifted. And the only thing is
Is
that
anybody
whatever can
carrying
be
out
done,
this? But Mr. Sati, is anybody carrying out this vulnerable study, or the vulnerable mapping is being done by anybody?
the administrative people are there, and yes, it's not a rocket science actually. The cracks on the houses and the dimension of the cracks, the speed of the widening of the crack is can be one of the criteria to select the houses. In that way, the select the people, the families, and that is the thing. Those houses which are comparatively safe, they should be treated in a later condition. But first, the priority should be of those people who have no house for living now, for stay, no shelter for stay. And there is a climatic harsh, very severe cold nowadays is there. And Joshimath is a very cold region. And the
Absolutely.
priority should be the people like small children, women, pregnant women, and those people who are suffering from some ails, some diseases, and they should be shifted first. And that should be the priority. And I'm happy that government machinery is there. And today, Dhamiji visited there. Otherwise, there was a utter negligence and indifferent from the government side. Otherwise, people are fighting for last 1.5 years
Right.
after 7th February 2021. There
Hmm.
was a there was a the cracks were observed there in the Joshimath and surrounding, and people were talking repeatedly. They were sending their gyapans. They were talking about, they were in a movement. They were dharna pradarshan sort of things were there. Gerao were there, but nobody was hearing. Nobody was listening their voices for
Hmm.
last. 1 week there is a extra activity from the government side towards that, and I treat it as a positive sign.
You treat it as a positive sign, but if I may ask you, Anup, that whatever the government is doing, it is their duty to do it. And I think it's all too little and too late. And despite so many recommendations by the expert committees, the governments, I'm not only blaming the BJP government, but also when Congress was in power, they have also overlooked all these recommendations. So, whom would you really hold accountable for what has happened today in Joshimath?
So the town of Joshimath is spread across an area of 11 to 12 square kilometers. So roughly, just 4 kilometers by 3 kilometers is 12 square kilometers. Now, administratively, the town has 9 wards. There are 9 wards in the town of Joshimath. Each town, on an average, we can say is about 2,000, 2,500 odd people. So these are small wards. Now, what is significant to note here is that the district administration is conducting door-to-door, house-to-house surveys. And through their daily bulletins, we are informed that as on 6th January 2023, there were 603 houses that had developed in each of the 9 wards. So this, I think, is very, very significant, that not even there is no ward in Joshimath right now where cracks have not appeared. That is number one. Number two, there are also 2 largest hotels. Of course, in a small town, you can't have a Oberoi or you can't have a Forced, whatever, 5 Seasons. But small hotels, two hotels have been shut down. The next important thing to know and to note also is that the government, as Dr. Sati is also mentioning, now they are running helter-skelter. And one of the action items that they have done is they are preparing backup, so where will people go? Where do people need to be evacuated? And that is something that people like Dr. Sati and I and others are now advocating, that the biggest priority now for the government is to ensure on a war footing the evacuation of distressed and distraught people. But to come back to this bulletin that I'm looking at right now, so they have made provisions for 1,271 people. Let's summarize, 1,300 people. So government is saying, okay, we have made arrangement for 1,300 people. But now this 1,300 compared to the 25,000 is barely 10%. So these are the numbers. This is the perspective. Again, to come back to your question, too little, too late, I totally agree with you. Dr. Sati referred to, and I want to repeat that once again, it's a very, very important marker, a very important date in the history of Uttarakhand, in the history of Himalayas, in the history of district of Chamoli, which is the unfortunate calamity of 7th February 2021. Right. So ironically, Neelu, today, 23 months have passed, right? Because today is also 7th January. And 1 month from now, 7th February 2023, we will be shedding tears on the 2nd deadly anniversary of that horrific, it's called the Dholi Ganga, Rishi Ganga disaster, where, more than 200 people died. People were trapped in these hydropower projects. So that is one. The second thing is, on 17th of October, Sati ji, मेरे को correct कर देना, I think 17-18 October की बात है, in 2021, 190 millimeter rain fell in Joshimath on one day. So it is almost now, and why, I'm bringing up all these examples, why he's bringing up all these examples, because it has been 1.5 to 2 years, and these cracks have been coming, and people have been saying since that time, कि boss यार हमारे घरों में crack आ रहे हैं, please do something about it. And as he was also mentioning, people have in their own ways, where do people go here? Where does a citizen really go? If something of this calamity will happen.
But Anup, you raise very valid questions, but my point is that whom would you hold responsible?
Of course, the government is responsible. It is the government, Neelu. Tell me, so, so of course the government is responsible. That is what I was, when you asked me, where should the people go? The people can only go to the government. There is nobody else. In this mountain, there are no industries, there are no technology firms, there is no Infosys, there is no artificial intelligence that, you can have some technology, you can have some solution. So the only solution provider actually is the government. The government is the one which has the resources, which has the wherewithal to fix this, And of course, the government is the one that is the regulator. So again, okay, we don't have a lot of time, but there is a lot of talk about this Mishra Committee report of 1976, 40, 50 years ago. They said 40, 50 years ago that you should not do all this nonsense in Joshimath. So of course, governments are responsible, whether BJP, Congress, Sappa, Baspa, AVC, XYZ, whoever. इस हमाम में सब नंगे हैं नीलू, हिंदी में कहते हैं हमाम में सब नंगे हैं. Everyone is responsible. This is collusion of the highest order. This is absolute apathy, lack of governance, whatever you. And the only thing which has happened now has happened in the last 1 or 2, 3 days.
But Mr. Sati, what is most unfortunate is that all these recommendations by the expert committees have been overlooked by all the governments and all the dispensations. Now, how does really treat this alarm bell of Joshimath? Joshimath is just on the brink of collapse. Yeah, as Anup was saying, one rain and the entire town, goes underwater. What does one do now? How do we read what the condition of the Himalayas is? Himalayas is relatively, they are a young mountain, but then look at the kind of religious tourism which has taken place. So what I want to ask you is Joshimath really going to bring some sort of lessons for the government, for the citizens who are trekking, in terms of the fact that should there be an end to religious tourism and the kind of relentless development activity which is taking place? Somebody will have to go and tell the government that, look, now you have to stop. Who's going to do that?
Every calamity is a lesson otherwise, but we have a history of not learning from these calamities. Right from 2013 Kedarnath calamity to 2021 this Rishiganga calamity, we don't learn anything. We are learned to not to learn anything from these type of calamities. That is the sad story of this. And yes, Joshimath is a big thing. Some 30 to 35,000 people are there, and we have to evacuate it. It would be one of the biggest operation of the hills to evacuate the people to settle them somewhere else. But another thing is that there are several townships in the hills which are equally vulnerable. They are on the time bombs. For example, Guptkasi, for example, Joshimath, for example, Dharchula, for example, Munchiari, Gopeshwar, Pauri, Karanprayag, Bhatwadi. There are several townships in the hills which are on just similar type of words, and they are about to collapse. There are already subsidences from different sides of these townships, and we don't learn anything. There is similar situation. There is no proper drainage. There is no proper geotechnical measures. Nobody is near unplanned growth. It is an unplanned construction. It is not development. When we talk about development, development is a positive thing. It's not a development. It is construction, growth, unplanned growth. These are something which are going to bring several townships in the future to down towards the valleys, and at least 3,000 villages are also in the similar words. That is a big thing. We will see in the coming days or coming years that our governments has not learned any lessons. We have not changed our attitudes. No environmental considerations are seen in the developmental planning, and these are our repeated story for the last several years actually.
Right. Anup, towards the last lap of the program, what would be your closing comments, Anup, really?
I totally and 100% empathize, agree with what Dr. Sati has said, So, and I really liked, what he said that, we have learned to never learn. So having said that, that is one aspect. One of the things, Neeru, which gives me actually hope now is coming from Jharkhand. Now, of course, you'll turn back and say, Anup, कि तुम्हारे को झारखंड से क्या hope आ रही है? What has happened in Jharkhand is, when the Jain community worldwide and in India has spoken in unison and has said that don't convert that their biggest this thing that into a tourist hotspot. I think something of that, some sort of a movement in Uttarakhand of that sort of a movement has to take place in Uttarakhand. Uttarakhand has always had a history of vibrant citizen-centric protests. Of course, Chipko is a global eco-feminism driven movement. So I think that the people of Uttarakhand really have to rise now. They have to speak in unison. Not they. We have to speak in unison, We have to speak in unison. We have to speak in one united voice, because it's not about me. It's not about him. I think it's about the state of Uttarakhand, and it's about the state of, and he is spot on. There is not one, Joshimath is in the limelight. On a very, very sad and on a very ironical note, Joshimath, is sinking. But at least, we should now, the state, the machinery, the government, the people here should wake up. We should not let other Joshimaths flower and flourish in Uttarakhand. I think that is one takeaway. And we have to learn from Jharkhand. We have to be united because the way we are going, this is only the highway to nowhere.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I hope that the government listens to the experts like both of you, and hope Joshimath becomes a wake up call. And as both of you said, that there are many Joshimaths within the Himalayas waiting to collapse. Hope the government can really save all these towns, really. Thank you so much, Anup Nautiyal. Mr. Sati, thank you so much for joining. Stay tuned to the Federal for much more. Thank you very much.
Subscribe to the Federal's YouTube page for more interesting updates.